Good evening. It being approximately 7 p.m., I'd like to call the planning board meeting to order. Mr. Weinfeld, chairman, is on Zoom tonight and will be running the show. Kevin, take it away.
Good evening. First thing I presume is going to be Paige's planner's report.
Yes, it is.
How do I handle that?
Find my glasses. So I had mentioned a couple meetings ago that we are going to be talking about parking uptown again. So that's kicking off. DPW, Planning, and Public Safety are meeting next week with the plan of going to the selectmen on this at their May 10th meeting. We'll be making a brief presentation of kind of what our recommendations are, and then we'll let stakeholders know, and then open it up to public comment for like a month probably. And then reconvene in the June meeting to sort of discuss sort of the input and whatnot to come up with a parking plan that works for everybody. The goal of having it in place, mid-June, hopefully. Go ahead.
Question, so would this be an interim or provisional package for this season?
No, I think.
How you kind of envision it?
No, I think this is a parking plan that, as we enter the next phase of Uptown, Shoveltown's opening up in June or July. So suddenly we're going to have, probably a fair number of people there. The theater's back up and running again. So we're just envisioning some concerns around parking. So, and as we draw residents, Wall Street is supposed to open up in October. We'll see. And then, the fire station's going to bring on 4 units also this year. And then, next year we'll be getting the additional 15. So we want to make sure we have a good plan for like the short-term parking, make sure we protect the businesses and they're not getting long-term people in front of them. But we also need to have places where, say, theater goers and dinner goers, going to be 4 hours or something where they go. And then we're also going to probably have some extra cars that need to go overnight, and where should they go? So we're trying to just figure out all the different varying uses and come up with a plan. I think what more so would it be is, we'll try something, and if it doesn't work, we'll be able to adjust as we did with like the Rotary work. We've been, trying to do things provisionally and keeping the lines of communication open. So I'll be bringing it up at the Foxborough Common Business Collaborative meeting Wednesday morning, and then, like I said, we'll be at the Selectmen on May 10th, sort of letting people know, putting it out there. Then we'll have a month where we'll have it on a website, let people look at it, digest it. Probably have some sort of, I don't know if it's a survey, or much like, remember the Rotary, we did that, we kind of had that meeting, we had a bunch of people in here, and they were also able to submit their comments through SurveyMonkey. It was actually just a way to submit comments. So we'll do something like that, try to make sure because I'm sure people will have a lot of thoughts on this. And really the business owners are the ones, they're the key stakeholders, but we all want to make sure that the customers and the visitors uptown are happy as well. So it's sort of two-pronged. So stay tuned for that. That's everything's all of a sudden coming up so fast. When you think of the selectmen want to make sure that everybody has time to process and do, suddenly we're into June, but the blink of an eye. So we don't want to drag our heels on this one. Walnut Street, if you recall, for the Housing Authority project last meeting or the meeting before, I said there was going to be a community meeting on May 11th. That has since been postponed. We had a great meeting the Housing Authority did with the team that's going to be developing that project, and they started showing us they're nowhere near a design, but they went out there, they got familiar with the site, they noticed the understory was a lot less dense than they would have thought, so they thought of pushing the buildings further away from the North High Street residents. So they're really trying to do a sensitive design. And they don't want to come to the community with anything too early. They also don't want to come in with anything too set in stone. But they didn't think May 11th would be enough time for them to have a design that was ready for the public eye. So stay tuned for that. We're thinking it'll probably be more June. And they still are hoping to file. I know they'd like to file sometime this summer. I will be shocked if that works out, just because of the DHCD and the time it took, I know, the other project to get through there, but we'll see. But I know they're trying to move quickly. I know Barney and the ZBA doesn't relish the idea of having Moore Street and Walnut Street at the same time. I'd be shocked if they overlapped, especially at the beginning of the project. I think Moore Street will be much ahead. So stay tuned for that. But just so you know, May 11th is off the table. Probably be something in June. Town meeting, just a reminder to everybody that the election is, in case you hadn't heard, this little election on Tuesday. And then town meeting is the following, not Tuesday, Monday. Election is Monday. And then the following Monday is town meeting, 7:30. So always like to get people there. It's vacation time, so I'll be off the last 2 weeks of May. Diana's off a couple days during that period, and Gabby's off a week in June. So doing that. And then I just wanted to make sure everybody saw our meeting dates for the summer. So let us know, as always, if you think you'll be traveling. I know typically we don't tend to meet every one of these, but just try to keep us posted on your plans. And that's it.
Okay, anything under active subdivisions to deal with tonight?
No.
Okay. And so I know there's some minutes there that from April 7th and April 14th that the board needs to approve. So if those guys have them, I do not, but if they do, I'm happy to have them weigh in.
It's just the 7th, and
Just
Jeff
the 7th.
Jeff gave me an edit, so you could approve it as amended.
Okay.
So make a motion to approve the minutes for April 7th as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Roll call.
Jeff, aye.
Gary, aye.
Ron, aye.
Kevin, I.
Who's Tom? Where is Tom?
He's on Zoom.
Okay, there he is. Come on, Tom, stay with the program.
Poor Tom doesn't know when he can vote and when he can't, in his defense, so he's just waiting to be, that
I've been there.
that weird associate role where you never know whether you're voting or not, so here.
Okay, so what time do we have here?
Oh, we got lots of
We
time.
got about
on
8
G.
minutes,
Got a
Kevin.
filibuster.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question back to that parking
Yes, yes.
issue? Is Bank America active in the collaborative?
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
They want
Like, we specifically requested the use of their parking lot. Remember when they came in for the charging stations? We tried to do a little negotiating, and they did preferred not to negotiate, or not negotiating, it was more like, hey, will you let us? And they were definitive, absolutely not.
No, that's not private property.
We know that.
And
Is there
I've heard that,
any
It's the same in Franklin.
evidence of whether they're planning to reopen or not?
They're open,
They are open.
Oh, are they open now?
2
Okay.
weeks.
yeah. I don't know if y'all know that one of the town meeting articles on, just coming 2 weeks from Monday, or a week from Monday, is an article that's somewhat economic development related, and that's related to the property, the Bragg house, which is next to Judy's Florist. One of the articles is an easement to allow her to tie into the sewer on Market Street, because they are not allowed to cut into the School Street area in front of, on the Common, so they would not be able to upgrade their, I don't know if they have a cesspool or a septic system, but they wouldn't be able to upgrade to sewer, and then they'd have to deal with just their small site. So one of the ideas was, before Doug King builds our public parking lot there on 15 to 17 Market, we wanted to make sure she could get her sewer line in to allow that future connection. We don't know what's going to happen, if anything, there. I mean, someone still lives there, but it is something, the landowner and I have been in contact, and so just so you know, there is that article, and, yeah. Bill Buckley, do you know if she has a cesspool or a septic there?
I don't know what she has.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure.
Since you brought up Judy's, what's that trailer that's there?
Oh, it's allowed.
Is it allowed? Registered?
Diana would know probably because of so there's history on that. It was allowed, I believe, as a temporary use, again, or,
And then the zoning bylaws changed.
And then it
so
changed.
Somehow it ended up being a permanent use.
so it's allowed. It went to the ZBA last summer. Linda Shea appealed it, so it went all the way to the zoning board, and they found that it was an allowed use. So it's staying. It's
Shame they have that
unfortunate.
So visible in this area of town.
I know, it's frustrating, but it is allowed, unfortunately. So, yeah.
So is it allowed as structure? Should be taxed?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I wonder if it's taxed as a personal
It's on
property
the
or
property. It's
something.
gotta
I don't
be,
know.
somebody has to classify it as an improvement. It's a building asset, business asset.
Yeah.
Well, as Paige said, it could be personal property, just like
Okay, so that's taxable.
It is taxable.
Small amount, but
It is
it's,
small
it is
amount.
taxable. Okay.
It is, and then part of the parking plan, like, I don't know if we'll get to it this phase, but, you know, some of the things we have to consider is there is that area where Doug King currently is using behind Judy's, that's town-owned, but we always thought it was part of Judy's property, so we've since learned that is town property. So once the construction's over, that land will, you know, there won't be a fence around it anymore, and then, so there's been a discussion of how to handle that town-owned land in the future. So I think for the parking plan, you know, whether it's going to be licensed to Judy's, whether they're going to be allowed to just use it as their own, you know, how that basically works.
Spots over there.
I don't know. There were like 4 or 5 or 6 or something. I don't know. Because they can't get too close to the garage because then they
Right.
block it. So kind of out there. I don't know.
I'm not even sure it's wide enough to do a turnaround, is it?
No, I was thinking maybe Doug King might want to buy it.
Or Judy's might want to buy it.
Judy's won't buy it.
So that's part of it. Then also coming up with rules for the 15 to 17 Market Street lot. You know, like, what are the rules? You know, are you people allowed to park there long term? You know, can you have commercial parking there? What are the parameters for that? You know, I mean, we want it to be a convenience, but we also want to make sure it's not abused and that it's open to use. So, yeah, we've been looking at. And Jeff, did you say that Bethany is interested in discussing parking in the future, or was that a dream? Okay. We did pass that on to Shoveltown. Was that to Shoveltown or to us, or the theater?
Well, it was really to Shoveltown.
Okay, good. That's who theater. That Shoveltown is the one we passed it on to.
Thank you. Yep.
By way of update, we wrote a letter today. There's been some movement to try to get some support from Congressman Auchincloss to cover some of the costs associated with sewering Route 1. So there's been a push to get an earmark or some sort of funding through that. So Kevin wrote a letter today. Well, I wrote a letter, but Kevin reviewed it, and so we did send in a letter. I basically just used the master plan language and some results of surveys and kind of just highlighted that it's been a priority and that Route 1 is also considered a state, you know, with the economic development area, and it's being a priority development area. It's not just a town asset, but it's a sort of a regional state asset for economic development. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. It kind of came out of nowhere. We had already applied, you know, asked for $5 million from him for Walnut Street, so we'll see. We're asking. We'll see how it goes. There's also an earmark on the current bill on the economic development bond bill under consideration from Jay Barrows for the Walnut Street infrastructure work as well. Again, we'll be shocked if it get fully funded, but you know, we're trying to just see. There's a lot of ARPA money out there. There's a lot, so you just never know. And you know, the Invest in America Act and all that. So there's been some transportation money. So perhaps we'll hit a sweet spot. The Housing Authority did get $100,000. Oh, this is another one for Walnut Street signal and sewer. So that's great because MassDOT has informed us that there's $45,000 worth of design work remaining on this interchange to bring it to 100%. You know, as we're doing this design work for them, you know, I mean, it's a state intersection, but we have to do it because it's not on their priority list. So the good news is all the funding has been through. You know, through grants and whatnot, but we're up now. I need another 45,000. So the good news is we just got 100,000, unbeknownst to us, thanks to Jay Barrows. So plugging away. 7:14. 1 minute. What else?
Lots more.
No, I don't have anything more.
No,
I'm sure I could come up with something.
well, thanks for writing the letter, Paige.
Thanks for signing it, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I mean, no problem. And I, you know, listen, even if Mr. Auchincloss is successful, as we all know, it's with federal funds. It could take some time before anything really moves along, and then even after that, I'm presuming, like other projects that come from the federal government, it'll find a home at the state level, and then they'll let us know if and when it can get released for the uses that we need it for. So.
Very true. I mean, we got 2 million already for this project, and then we lost it. So, just because, Congress couldn't agree, and so they ended up
Fun.
dropping all community projects in order to get along. So we had 2 million, and then we didn't. So this has been a little bit of a roller coaster, but we're getting there.
Okay.
It was fun to win for
All
a
right,
little while.
I think it being on or about 7:15 p.m., we have a continued public hearing, site plan review for 11 Springbrook Road, construction of a 30,000 plus or minus square foot office warehouse building by G Green Properties LLC. So do I hear a motion to open the hearing? Or to continue the hearing?
Mr. Chairman, before we start the
Yep.
hearing, I am going to recuse as a direct abutter.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to open the hearing.
Second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Jeff, we.
Gary, aye.
So, Mr. Buckley and company, are you the ones representing the applicant?
Yes, we are.
Very good. Would you like to start?
Yep. So, good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name's Cameron Gray. I'm here tonight with Bill Buckley and Betsy DeShulo from G Green Properties. We're here tonight to continue the discussion for the site plan proposed at 11 Springbrook Road. So just to refresh everyone, Springbrook Road is located off of East Belcher Road, just past the hockey rink there. And 11 Springbrook Road is located at the end of the road in the cul-de-sac. It's the last lot to be developed in that subdivision. And again, we are proposing a 30,000 square foot warehouse along with the associated parking and utilities. When we last met, we just received the comments from the board's consultant and we're working through them. And since then, we've answered a majority of those comments while also making revisions to the site plan and our stormwater management plan. And I'd like to open up for any questions or comments or concerns from the board that we could answer.
We don't have plans in front of us. I'm trying to remember. It's just the one multi-bait in appearance.
Yes.
So this is it right here.
Okay, I
That's the
remember.
rendering it.
Yeah, I didn't have any concerns with it. What'd you have, Jeff?
No, but I'd be interested to know what specifically you've been addressing. Are these just technicalities raised by our consultants?
So it really is the stormwater system of the subdivision as a whole. So we went and modeled the whole thing in HydroCAD and showed that it complied with all the stormwater standards in the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook.
Mr. Chairman, I can confirm one of the issues was related to the original basin for the entire subdivision, so very historical information. So we ultimately did check with DPW today, yesterday, earlier this week, and I got some emails back today that Chris Gallagher and Lance are satisfied. They say, Chris Gallagher wrote, Lance and I feel that if the current rainfall data standard per Mass DEP is used for calculations, then the planning board should be satisfied with the design. In the future, Mass DEP changes the data, then Foxborough should follow and require that new design standard. As for the detention basin, we do not have any known issues with the basin. We are working to identify ownership over the basin and address any outstanding O&M at that time. If the 11 Springbrook project is designed to meet the pre-post requirements, then it should not be adding any increase in flow or rate to the off-site basin. We feel the planning board should be satisfied with the design. So to confirm, Cameron, you are meeting the pre and post requirements of the stormwater management
Yes.
requirements? Okay. So we feel, there were a few comments remaining in the engineering review letter, but they were more subjective, we're new with this firm, so they're not necessarily fully knowing, how we have done things, so nothing critical. This was, basin question was the outstanding issue, and that we consider resolved, so we don't believe there's anything critical remaining at this point. And the other departments, I believe Kevin read the prior meeting, he read the comments from the public safety and Board of Health and whatnot.
I don't remember the topo on that, but that lot is higher than the adjacent lots.
Yes.
Well, at least higher than 9 spring, but not necessarily higher than tree tech.
Right, right.
You're not cutting that down, that's staying up.
We're cutting it's not a weird, but it's a different lot. So if you look at that back of it and the top of it, so the east and the north, that's cut. So we're cutting that down. And then the south part and along Ron's property there to the west or southwest, that's a fill. So we're kind of balancing it, cut, fill on it, and there's walls around most of the site. In order to, the bottom line is they're trying to maximize the site usage, so they're willing to bite the bullet on the infrastructure in order to do that, which is not unusual.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board? If not, is there anyone in the audience who has questions or comments that they need addressed for this continued hearing?
No one has any hand raised,
No,
Kevin?
no comments.
Okay. Very good. So then I'll entertain a motion to close the continued public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Jeff, aye.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve the submittal as finished
So moved.
With standard conditions?
with standard conditions.
So Gary made that in form of a motion, and I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Jeff, aye.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very welcome. So we still have a few minutes before a new public hearing at 7:30 p.m. So was that a hand wave back there?
What, Kevin?
Nothing. I thought I saw someone in the audience waving their hand about something, so I wasn't sure of that.
Just waving to me, Kevin.
There we go. Well, it's nice to know your love, Jeff.
One of Jeff's admirers. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to the YMCA for a meeting. Let's see what I'm doing. It's a breakfast interview, so we're talking about issues facing the community. So I'm going at 8 a.m. to do that.
Are they just using the facility, or are they hosting?
They're hosting, so I don't really know. I have a form, homework, shall we say, that I have not completed yet, but what else is going on? Did I mention I'm going to Italy?
I think you did. You never know. These things could go on for 45 minutes, and then we'd be half
I
an hour
know.
behind.
I know, usually we're running behind. So Judy, you just said
Nothing
there are more
else going
people
on
out
in any
there
of
for
the
you?
many subcommittees you're a part of, Paige?
Bragg's on his way.
They can come in if they want.
Have him just sign in.
I didn't hear that, Kev.
Yeah.
I was asking Paige if there's anything else from any of her many subcommittees that she's involved with.
Well, I did have a Zoom today. Tomorrow, we're starting to talk about branding for the region, for our regional marketing effort. So that's kind of interesting. I'm doing a whole new thing. We just hired a videographer and a branding company and all sorts of stuff I don't know anything about. But
Who's considered to be in the region that's going to be part of that?
well, we're not necessarily trying to attract people in our region. We're trying to attract people from like drive markets. So, you know, you might try to attract like someone from Maine or New Hampshire or New York or New Jersey or, you know, California or whatever. It's one of the ideas when people come to Boston, a lot of times they spend, you know, they want to come to the outlet mall. So it's like you could draw them out here and then have them, rather than come out for just half a day on a charter bus or whatever, just have them come spend a night here and do some of our local amenities. So
And is that specific to Foxborough, or are there other towns that are part of that?
Foxborough, Rentham, Plainville. Because remember, our big three are Plain Ridge Park, Gillette Stadium, Patriot Place, and the Rentham Community Outlets. Together, pre-COVID, they attracted over 20 million visitors a year to our region, and yet very few stayed overnight. I see I'm a commercial. So,
There we go.
so that's why we're trying to do it. Now, COVID did change things, but it's actually almost a good pivot point. We're also eventually going to be marketing to like conferences and try to get business travel out here so that folks might, they might organize the smaller conferences that maybe can't afford Boston, have them come out to, say, the stadium, do a conference there, have excursions around. So trying to do that. But someday you might see a commercial.
So is this being done through the Tri-Town Chamber or other chambers? Or
No, this is done by me, through we're doing it through the Mass Gaming Commission funding, and now the current funding paying for the videos and all that is actually, we're now moved up to the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism. So, now we're working with them, so it's actually getting some more legs. And, with this next round, we're gonna get real, we're gonna have real, like, B-roll video. I don't know what that means, but apparently it's good. And then, professional photography and, actual professional marketing materials and whatnot. So it's been very interesting. And now I just submitted a request for funding for additional gaming money to do the next phasing. So it could get, it's totally over my head, but luckily you hire professionals and they do it for you. So, but yeah, tomorrow's we start talking about branding. So it'll be interesting.
How much has Foxborough received from Plainville? Any idea how much we've gotten from that yet?
Like from the casino itself?
Casino, yeah.
I don't think we get anything.
But we get something for mitigation? I thought we did.
We got $100,000 just in mitigation money, and it couldn't be spent because there were no impacts. So that's why I was able to say, because it said impacts, it didn't say only negative impacts, so I was able to sell it that we're actually helping Plain Ridge by drawing people down here. So we used the $100,000 on this. So we've been piecemeal, and we also got to use some of Rentham's money. So we've been working on this, little bits, and now finally we're getting bigger chunks because, Mass Office of Travel and Tourism is starting to see the legs on it, and then Gaming Commission hopefully will also see, and they'll let us go to the next phase. We're on phase 5. So it's been since 2019, and literally have no idea what we're doing, but we're just.
You're doing it.
We're doing it. Yeah.
Successfully. Yeah. You're doing it.
Sorry to leave you in dead silence, but we still have 2 more minutes until we can officially start the public hearing.
Gary, any summer travel planned? You have your dates?
See the cost of diesel this year? Yeah, busy most weekends.
Most weekends, yeah. You got your regular vineyard slip?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. July 4th?
Yep, whole week. Yeah, I got like 4 trips, 5 trips to that. And then we'll do the other harbors as well. And Block Island, Newport, we're doing, yeah.
Nice.
Yep, starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow I go down. My season begins.
We mean go down where?
Down to the boat.
Where is it?
Falmouth.
Oh.
Yeah.
Still supposed to be windy tomorrow, isn't it?
I mean,
It's supposed to still be windy tomorrow?
yeah, but I'm not leaving the dock, but I'm gonna be on it, which is just as good to me.
Do you sleep on it when it's there? Right there, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll be down there every weekend now, right through into December.
Wow. Jeff, do you go anywhere in the summer? Like, do you travel?
Probably not.
No.
Want to go to Falmouth?
Just in the nick of time, huh?
Thank goodness it's local, that's all I can say.
Okay.
Diana's going to get Ron. We lost Ron for a second.
Sorry.
All right, as soon as Ron comes back, we will open the hearing.
Sorry.
Good.
Does everybody have prints or no?
Yeah, I'll wait till we start it off. They have the smaller ones anyway.
You wanna look at this?
You can hand them out to him now. It's probably
Yeah.
better to do it now.
I'll make a motion, to open the public hearing. Second that.
42
Those in
Spring
favor?
Street.
Jeff, aye.
Gary, aye. Ron, aye.
Kevin, I. So it being on or about 7:30 PM, we have a public hearing, definitive subdivision for
Those
42
Same as this, just
Spring
enlarged?
Street.
Okay.
A proposed one-lot subdivision with Judy, Ronco, Warner.
Excuse me, Kevin, can you get the volume up a little higher, please?
Yeah, if
Maybe
we can figure
Paul?
out how to make
Paul's
this thing
doing it.
work. Let's see.
All set.
So I think, Kevin, do you want me to go ahead?
Is that any better?
Very nice.
A little bit.
Yep.
Okay. So, yes, please proceed.
Hi, I'm Judy Ronco Warner. Just wanted to introduce myself to everybody. Was formerly on 40 Spring Street. That's where our family grew up. We've had this piece of land for,
Judy? Yeah, I'm talking to the microphone.
Yeah,
oh,
like,
sorry. We've had this piece of land since my parents purchased it back in the early 60s. And we had obviously built a residence on 40 Spring Street. I just wanted to introduce myself and my husband Roger and our family is all here. We're trying to subdivide the piece of land that we've had and hoping that we'll be able to have access to be able to build on the property. So I have Craig, our engineer.
This is Craig Siganowski, Rim Engineering. Like she said, the lot was divided in 1960 through the land court process. Two lots side by side, number 40 and 42 Spring Street. Both lots have 125 feet of frontage. 42, this is 40.
40.
Yeah, lot number 40, which is to the west side of this property, has an existing house on it, and this is a vacant piece of land left over. It has 125 feet of frontage and 74,000 square feet of land. So today's zoning requires 200 feet of frontage in the R40 zone. So we are proposing a roadway to create that frontage, and then we're asking for waivers to allow the non-construction of the road and considered a single-family house lot with a driveway, with drainage along the driveway. So that is the purpose of the plan, is to create the frontage in order to have a single-family house on the land.
But today is for the waivers specifically for the road.
Correct. And specifically, just the frontage? So what would you, normally when you would come in, you'd be asking for specific waivers?
They're on the plan.
They're on the
Oh,
plan.
they're all on the
They're
plan,
not
yeah.
seeking a frontage waiver, they're seeking other waivers.
Yeah, we're not, right, we've created the required frontage, but we're asking for a waiver to, several waivers, if you, I can read them off if you'd like me to.
Why don't you do that, just so they'll be part of the record?
Okay. So section 5.02B, to waive the requirement that the pavement width be 20 feet, and we're requesting a 12-foot wide driveway. Excuse me. Section 5.03E, to waive the requirement that the cul-de-sac be constructed and paved, and we're requesting a hammerhead paved in its place. Section 5.04A, to waive the requirement for curbing on the edge of the roadway pavement. We're requesting that there not be curbing as it's a driveway. Section 5.04B, to waive the requirement for sidewalks on both sides of the road. We're requesting that no sidewalks be required. Section 5.06, to waive the requirement for a stormwater management system. We're requesting the use of a stone trench along the driveway, which would accomplish the same goal. Section 5.08B, to waive the requirement for streetlights along the roadway, requesting no streetlights. Obviously, along the driveway, they would place for the house their own lighting. Section 5.09A, to waive the requirement for street trees along the roadway, requesting no street trees. This is a fully wooded property, so they would clear enough land for the driveway until we get to the house. So the front of the lot, the house is set back about 200 feet from the street, so there'd be plenty of remaining trees as a buffer between the neighbors and the streets. Section 5.018, to waive the requirement that the minimum distance between street center line to center line be 200 feet. Murphy Lane is an existing road to the east of our property. The furthest over we could push our center line of our road between the center line of Murphy Lane is 107.10 feet. And again, this would be a driveway, not an actual road. That covers all the waivers.
Thank you. And you would be looking to keep this as a private driveway, not as becoming a town-accepted road?
Correct. That was one of the comments, one of the town board department heads was that it should be kept as a private road, and that is the intention.
Okay.
Do we have anything from fire on this?
We do. Here it is. Good morning. As long as the proposed turnout is constructed, the fire department is okay with this project. Would you like me to read the other comments?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, so that was that was Dave Larissy, Deputy Fire Chief. Chief Grace, the police department has no concerns with this project. Conservation, to my knowledge, there are no wetlands on or within 100 feet of this parcel, so it's non-jurisdictional for the commission. The health department has not conducted a soil analysis on the site since 1997. Please schedule a perk test and submit all necessary paperwork for the construction of an on-site septic system to the health department for review. Let's see. From the DPW, Lance, our town engineer, stormwater runoff from the impervious areas must be contained and recharged on site. This could be accomplished through swale, underground infiltration, retention basin, or other LID options. And was that swale just added on?
No,
That was on there?
We proposed that from the beginning.
He must have missed that then. Interesting. Okay, and then from the water department, please let them know that the service line needs to be one continuous piece, not spliced, as splices tend to leak over time. So those are all the professional staff comments.
And if my comment to both the Board of Health and the Water Department be at the time that we submit the plan for a single-family house lot with a septic system, we will have done perk tests, and the water service line concerns would be noted on the plan. We did do a deep hole on the site to see where groundwater was. We went down 12 feet, didn't hit any groundwater, and it was. We were doing it actually for the drainage system to see if the water would be able to be recharged on the property through the trench, and it is class 1 soils.
Okay.
So in the front area, I see some sloping. He's thinking that that's going to be graded out, basically where your septic is proposed to be.
Yes, the land is relatively flat all the way from Spring Street back to the end of our road. Within a half a foot from back of sidewalk to the property where the house would be, and then it begins to drop off. We placed the house there so we could take advantage of the slope for a walkout basement. So there would be some grading required for the septic system in that area.
That's in the back.
But it'd be minor.
Okay.
Be in the back.
So, Mr. Chairman, before you go to public comment, I'll just sort of clarify what this process is, as you know, the board sees these subdivisions, or whatever, filings under the Subdivision Control Act because they need to seek out frontage. In this case, the board always makes the applicant prove that they could build a subdivision road. And that's why the first plan is provided, to show the layout, that they could build it, and sort of the way and you all know how I feel about it, but the way it's been done numerous times in the town, and usually it's because the board has determined that they'd rather have a 12-foot driveway than a 22 or 18 even foot roadway with a big turnaround. I think the last one we heard about was 84 feet in diameter,
Right.
the Orchard Place one. So, this is why we see these every so often here at the planning board. So it's a waiver, but the alternative is they can come in and build this road by right, seeking no waivers, and then there'll be a cul-de-sac right there. And so.
I notice on the plan, you've got a proposal, I assume, for future use for an accessory apartment.
That has been nixed at this point.
Okay. Should it not be, that would require a separate
That would be
application,
separate.
wouldn't
That's a
it?
separate issue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We understand that.
yep. We're just looking at the road right now.
okay.
Yeah, they've obviously proven that they can do it with a, conventionally. And it is an advantage to the town if we don't have another road we have to maintain, be responsible for.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with it at all.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, there are a lot of people here in the audience.
No, I'm gonna, yeah, so anyone in the audience who'd like to question or comment, please state your name and address for the record.
You want the mic?
And go up to the microphone,
Yes,
please.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Edward Valanzola. I'm an attorney with Valanzola Law Group. We have a local office in Mansfield. Before I start my presentation, I have a quick question for the applicant, if I may. Are you going to be living at this property?
I am.
You are, okay.
Can I ask who you're representing?
Yes, I'm sorry, let's get into that. I represent Raymond and Terrence Lyons and their sister Janet Roxborough. So I'm going to go through, I have a letter that I'll put into the record, but I want to sort of highlight my comments, if I may, before I do that. So this property, if you go back to 2004, the applicant's parents at that time went before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a finding. The finding was because after the property was divided in 1960, if you're facing the property, the house is on the left. So that was my client's property, Janet Foxborough, and on the right is the shed. And the shed is there today if you go look at the property. So they created the nonconformity when they divided the property. In 2004, they asked the zoning board, they said, it was creative, they said, look, we want a finding that we're going to take that non-conforming structure, the shed, and we want to use it for residential purposes and expand it and turn it into a residential property. Creative, I've not seen that in all the years I've been doing this, but the zoning board rightfully denied it and said no. So here we are today. As they pointed out, they don't have the frontage. They don't have 200 feet of frontage, they only have 125 feet. Rather than go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is the proper route for this, and seek a variance for frontage, they're here trying to use the subdivision control law, and I'm going to explain to you in a minute why that can't be done. If they went to the zoning board, I think the hurdle they have is that they can't show a hardship for this property, right? It's perfectly, it's rectangular pretty much, and the applicant's parents created the nonconformity. So they wouldn't be able to show a hardship, and again, they created the noncompliance. So now they come before you and say this is a subdivision. So by definition, it is not a subdivision. The subdivision control law under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81L, says that you must have the, quote, division of a tract of land into 2 or more lots. 2 or more lots. Then General Law, Chapter 41 goes further. Section 81L says, it defines what a lot is. This is critical. It's an area of land in one ownership with definite boundaries used or available for use as the site of one or more buildings. So right there, you have a plan in front of you that's showing 1 lot, 1 house. It's not showing 2 lots with 2 houses. If you go further into this statute, Section 81M talks about the purpose of the subdivision control law. Quote, access to several lots therein. The purpose is for access to several lots therein. Throughout the subdivision control law and the statute, and I'm going to go through a few more sections, it talks about lots, 2 or more lots, not a single lot. As you know, the ways to create a lot in Massachusetts, you can do a number of ways. You can have an A&R plan, right? Approval not required. Or you can go in front of the zoning board. You see lots like this often where people apply to the zoning board for variances. Or you create a subdivision under the subdivision control law. We have two or more lots, you put a roadway in, all your infrastructure and everything else that's required. Sometimes you get some waivers. They don't have 2 lots here. If you go further into Section 81O of the statute, it talks about, quote, the plan has to show lots into which such land is to be divided. And again, it refers to lots. This plan that they have submitted to you shows a single lot and a roadway, and it doesn't show more than 1 building. If you look at the roadway they're showing, it doesn't have the radius required by Section 3.02C1I of your bylaw. So they're asking for a waiver on that, right? So what do they end up with when they're done here? They end up with essentially a house lot with a house and a driveway, which is, they got to go to the zoning board if they want to do that and get relief from the frontage. So they're saying to you, we want to use the subdivision control law to get around our problem with frontage, but we want to also at the same time waive just about everything that's required to make it look like a subdivision that complies with the subdivision control law, so that when we're done, we're going to have a single-family home with a driveway. That's not what the subdivision control law is for. They don't comply with Section 5.018, where the street, there has to be 200 feet of separation from other streets. You have Murphy Way, I think it is, to the right as you face the property. They've requested 8 waivers. 8 waivers. And if you look through each of those waivers, again, what they end up doing is they break down the subdivision, so they eliminate all of the requirements you have for a subdivision, a cul-de-sac, the infrastructure, drainage, things like that. They end up with a single-family lot. The statute, Section 81R, says that the board may waive strict compliance with its rules and regulations, quote, where such action is in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the subdivision control law. They have provided you with nothing that indicates why all of these waivers would be in the public interest. The only interest it'll be in is their interest to allow them to build a home on the property. When they're done, if this is granted, they'll have a lot that doesn't look like a subdivision, looks like a single-family home, and they did an end around on the Zoning Board of Appeals to avoid the dimensional problem they have, zoning problem they have with the property. The other thing I think would happen here is if this is granted, everyone in town that has a piece of property like this is non-compliant, whether it's for frontage, dimensional setbacks, whatever the problem may be, they wouldn't have to go to the zoning board anymore. You're setting a precedent. They can come in front of this planning board and say, hey, we want to do a subdivision. These are all the things that we need. We show them on the plan on the first page, and then on the second page, we tell you we need waivers. Now, we really don't want to do all that stuff. We just want to show it to you on the plan. At the end of the day, we want to end up with one house with a driveway. So how would that stop anyone else in town that has, and there's a lot of non-compliant land around, as you know, in Foxborough and all the surrounding towns, and everyone's trying to get creative, find ways to build on it. I don't blame them. But they, it was the applicant's parents who divided this property originally and made it non-compliant and sold the house on the parcel to the left. So I think the critical point I want to emphasize is that this is, with all due respect, this isn't discretionary. With all due respect, I do not think this board can even act on this application for approval of this definitive plan because there are not two lots shown on the plan that'll have a structure on each lot. So I will end at that point and reserve the right to perhaps make further comments after I hear other comments from the audience. I would like to offer my letter that summarizes the things I just talked about into the record, if I may.
So, Mr. Valenzola, this is Kevin Weinfeld. I'm the chairman of the planning board. Can I ask you a question, please?
Sure, it's Valenzola, sir.
So the people you represent, let's for a moment, you're not ignoring your argument. Let's just for the moment say, if some or none of these things were the issue, is there an objection on behalf of the abutters relative to this, that we would have if there weren't exceptions to the zoning arguments that you're making?
Oh, absolutely. My clients are all direct abutters to this property, especially a house to the left. And when this property was divided, it's non-compliant. The frontage made it non-compliant. It's not a buildable lot. We see this happen often where people divide lots, they sell land, they end up with a piece that they can't use any longer. Then years later, I mean, we all know what's going on in Massachusetts with residential property and the sale of homes and the value of land. So, I don't blame them. I see it all the time. You try to get creative and figure out a way to make it buildable. But yes, we have.
No, I hear you on all of that, and I'm not in contrast to your arguments. I'm saying to you that if these arguments were not part of, what we're talking about this evening, would your abutters, would the people you represent have an issue with the construction of this home? That's what I'm asking.
Would they object to it?
Yes.
Yes.
And what would the reason be for their objection if the arguments that you're making were not specifically, germane to this? If they just wanted to build a home there, what would the arguments be that they would have about them not building?
They don't have a lot that's buildable, doesn't comply with zoning, doesn't comply with the dimension.
No, I heard all of that.
The parents sold the property and divided it. They divided it and sold the property, what, in 1960?
No, I get all that.
Okay, but they made it non-compliant, so we object because it'll be too, it's tight out there. I walked the property yesterday.
Okay.
It's tight. It doesn't belong, and you have, I think it's Murphy Street or Murphy Way, a private way to the right side, and a house there those trees would come down, and it'll be on top of not only my client to the left, but the folks that are on Murphy Way.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'll open it up to other people, and then if there's if the board has any other further questions with you, they'll ask. Anyone else in the audience that has any comments or questions? If you do, please state your name and address and walk up to the microphone.
No one else seems to be coming up, Kevin.
No, I can see that. So
Okay.
I'll open it up to.
Oh, wait,
well,
someone's coming up.
James Murphy, 5 Murphy Lane, Foxborough, Massachusetts. My wife and I have no objection at all to the house being built. It'll be right there on a piece of property, and we have no objection to the fact that it's going to happen, and it's going to be across the street, across Murphy Lane from us. So, fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board, or
Just a
any
general,
statements?
yeah, just a general question. I would assume that in this area, a number of these lots are pre-existing non-conforming with relation to at least frontage?
I wouldn't want to guess. I haven't looked.
On that street, I would guess you're right.
What would the frontage be on number 40?
Same thing.
It's 125.
125.
So I presume that at time of splitting that up, that was conformity at that time.
If you're asking me, there may be other lots that are non-conforming in the area, but that, as the term goes, they're grandfathered.
Well, I just said
Right.
pre-existing
But
non-conforming.
they're already built, the houses are already built that are there.
We understand that.
Zoning changes, now those are permitted non-conforming because they don't have to go back and try to comply, they've already built their house.
Right.
But a lot like this is vacant land that's already been divided once, is non-compliant from the get-go, it doesn't have the right frontage. So the argument to say that there's other houses that may have the same frontage or may have the same dimensional challenges doesn't allow this property to now be built in 2022 under your current zoning bylaws. Specifically, it doesn't allow it to be built under your subdivision control law. These are arguments that could be made to the zoning board. That's, with all due respect, that's where this belongs. For them to talk about a hardship with the zoning board of appeals for the dimensional requirements. It's up to the zoning board to determine if there's a hardship and whether they have a lot, but they're not presenting to you 2 lots with 2 structures. Again, with all due respect, I don't think you have the authority to even rule on this because they haven't put before you a proper subdivision plan that shows 2 lots with 2 homes. They're just doing an end around the zoning challenge here.
Kevin, we do have someone who would like to speak.
Yes, please.
Please.
I was going to address
Name and address for the record, please.
Larry Ronco at 4 Pickering. My parents were the owner of this property at 40 Spring Street. Subdivided this property in the 60s, and with the intention that they had 2 buildable lots at that point. And I know you've just talked about possibly being grandfathered in, but this is what it was when it was subdivided with land court in the 60s. You wanted to say it's also a tight area. Well, I don't know what you consider a tight area, but this is over 1.5 acres of land. This is not a small parcel of land. I just wanted that for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from anyone on the board or in the audience? Any commentary you'd like to make, Paige?
No.
I have one quick
Sir, you need to go to the microphone.
Sorry, thank you. Just for the record, I'd like to ask if we can inquire of the planning director if she would agree with my interpretation of the subdivision control law that you need to show a plan with a way that has 2 lots on it.
I cannot agree. I don't disagree. I just would contend that this is very complex issue. I couldn't answer off the cuff. I've read lots of things over the years. I can't remember where it lands. I know there's been all sorts of different discussions about the validity of 1-lot subdivision plans and not different plans, so I wouldn't want to guess here. You've said a lot of things, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying there might be some other variations.
By the way, I think that line of questioning is a little out of hand
I'm
at this
sorry?
point. I think that line of questioning is a little inappropriate under the
Sir,
circumstances.
she's the planning director for the town, so I think her input on my interpretation, I mean, the threshold
And
question...
she just said she's not prepared to
I didn't
give
see
that
your
opinion
letter,
right
you
at this
didn't
time.
contact us, so I'm not prepared to, I'm not an attorney. I would certainly never sit here and opine as to land use law
You're
off the cuff.
perfectly capable
Let me rephrase
of
it then.
reviewing your position
I think
on
we-
behalf of your clients.
Sure. The threshold question here is, what constitutes a subdivision definitive plan that you can act on, right? And so, I'm telling you what my interpretation is. I read to you from the statute. It's unambiguous, 2 lots, and you're gonna be able to build on both lots. So respectfully, I would hope that, whether it's the board, its planning director, the professional, someone would, with all of the subdivisions that come before you over the years, that's sort of a threshold question, right? Do we have even a subdivision presented to us if it only shows 1 lot?
Right.
And so, you don't. And I don't think you can act on this. And I understand the equities, I understand what some of the people are saying, it was in the family. These are the arguments you hear often, but it's non-compliant. It doesn't comply with zoning. And this is something that just won't stand up in court. A court would not.
Well, you know what, though? Here's the difference. This is not a court of law.
No,
This is the
sir.
planning board, and you're entitled to your opinion, and we respect your opinion as an attorney, in fact. But I don't blame Ms. Duncan for not, feeling that she can, directly answer your question without doing some research, catching her unprepared, with your presentation this evening. And, we appreciate you. We respect your point of view. And I'm not saying that anyone's going to, take a vote on this right now. But I am saying that, you're presenting this as if it is a court of law, and it's not. And Mr. Bresci, if you have something, please feel free.
Yes. With all due respect, I feel we've beaten the dead horse enough for tonight. I would like to make a motion to continue this public hearing so that we can do some research and come up with a valid solution.
Sure, that's fair.
Do I have a second?
Before we do that, may I ask that the attorney submit his case law, precedent and case law, just so that we can have our attorney review it?
Absolutely.
So,
In writing to her board,
Sorry, say that again.
Could we have you send your case law to our board so that it can be
Absolutely.
filed with
Absolutely.
our
I think
attorney?
you
so
have my
the
email
attorney
if
can
you
review
want
it?
to send me that contact information, and I'll send it to your attorney.
no, you send it to us, and we'll send it to the
Oh,
attorney.
okay, sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, yeah, we continue to May 12th.
We got May 12th and June 6th. Those are our next 2 meetings.
What,
May
I would,
12th? What else do we have on May 12th, anything?
can we get it reviewed in time for May 12th?
When is that? That's coming
2
up, and we
weeks.
have town meeting in between there.
2 weeks. I would go to June.
Let's push it off.
Yeah, we need to have
It's gotta be
proper
busy 2
analysis,
Okay.
analyzation of this mess, so.
So, I second his motion.
7:15.
Okay.
Roll
All
call
in favor?
vote.
Jeff, aye?
Gary, aye.
Ron, aye.
Kevin, well, can you repeat the date again for that?
The 12th of June.
No, no,
No,
June 6th.
June
Oh,
6th, Kevin.
I'm sorry.
at 7:15 PM.
Okay, very good.
My bad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional information you need from us?
Nope.
No,
I don't think so.
Not at this point.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So it being sometime past 7:45 PM, we have a continued public hearing. Special permit site plan, west side of Route 1. To construct 4 new parking lots and perform improvements to 4 existing parking lots from NPS LLC.
We got a big turnover here, Kevin. One crowd's leaving.
No, that's okay. Well, take a minute and, get everybody in order.
We need a chance to review. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. I just listen to them on some pages before.
Let me put it in the file.
And just to prove that not everything in Foxborough that's controversial is on Route 1.
I know, that caught me off guard. That caught me off guard.
Me too.
We've had a stretch of neighbors. Like, you know, we have a lot of,
Really?
we went years with no one really paying attention. Sure.
Are we all set, Paige?
We are. And just to let you know, we do have our consultants from Environmental Partners on Zoom. So if we get to any issues regarding drainage or traffic, they are available for our assistance.
Very good, thank you. So, Mr. Krantz et al., if you'd like to start your continued presentation, we'd be happy to hear it.
Very well, thank you, and good evening. Expanding and centralizing Gillette Stadium parking. Not only operational benefits, we've talked about that before, not only required for economic growth of our properties along Route 1, we've talked about that before. It was just, I found it interesting this week that the Board of Selectmen and the town manager started to talk about discussions with Representative Auchincloss about potential for grants and sewering of Route 1, which is great. But what's that mean? We create the sewer, and you know that opens the door, and that's been the hinge that has been needed to open any door to create more development along Route 1. And if we get that development, what happens? My parking goes away. We lose our parking, we lose our control. And all that development is good. It's good for the town of Foxborough, it's good for the region, it's good for the Commonwealth. But we do need the parking, and our spaces do matter. Brittany will be going through with more details, but really what you're going to see is at Lot 44, the comment came back from the closest of butters that they had no berm, they had no trees. In the plans that you'll see, they now have both. Lot 42C, you received a long letter, many of the items that we've addressed previously with this board, but we are proposing to go to a 6-foot solid fence, which will help with the noise and hopefully mitigate some of those concerns with no gates, along with the 6-foot berm. We'll look to put the green giant arborvitaes, which were discussed. And 55C, we've added berms, we've added solid fence, as well as the green giant, and you'll see a little bit different variation of a plan in the set that Brittany goes through, that we've reviewed with the closest abutter, and I think we'll let her speak to her thoughts on that. And then just to reiterate, we've shown our intentions since 2009 in our MEPA filing, and as late as 2018 in our notice of project changes. We're trying to act, not react to the future. I believe we've been respectful and reacted to concerns that have been raised, and hope there's an understanding as to why our reasons are for moving this forward. With that, Brittany, if you don't mind going through some of the detail, please.
Brittany, before you jump in, just one clarification, just so I get it.
Sure.
You made the mention, Dan, about the sewer and my parking will go away. I assume you're referring to off-site?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to be clear about that.
Yes, with the development.
I get it,
Development of other off-site parcels, that our parking constraints get further constrained.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan. Again, for the record, my name is Brittany Gesner. I'm a civil engineer with VHB. I'm going to do my best to keep this as brief as possible. We are going on tonight is our third public hearing, plus we had a site walk, so we'll limit it to new things to discuss, although I'm happy to discuss anything else you guys want to. So just a reminder, this is our third public hearing. We met on March 10th. We had a site walk on March 29th. A second public hearing on April 7th, where we heard concerns, requests, we incorporated some revisions. Again, on April 7th, we heard concerns, we've incorporated, again, some more revisions, and those revisions since April 7th until now are what I'm going to focus on today. So since April 7th, we have submitted a formal response to the town to the stormwater peer review comments. Alongside those, we've submitted revised site plans in accordance with our formal response to the stormwater comments, as well as some of the changes based on this public hearing process that I'll walk through tonight. We also submitted a revised stormwater report, which addresses the comments in our response. And then today, we did receive a second letter from the peer reviewer that reviewed our responses. Of the, I believe there's 27 or 28 original comments, nearly all of them are closed. There are maybe 3 open items that we don't anticipate, we feel very comfortable that we can come to an agreement on those. So we still need to work through that, but minor issues. So that's essentially what has happened in the last, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So tonight, really the changes that have happened since the last time are we've increased buffers, as Dan already summarized. So I'm going to walk through those based on what we heard 3 weeks ago, and then we'll just have a brief summary of next steps and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you.
So here you can see the site plan. There's really 3 parking lots that have been the focus of these public hearings. Parking lot 42C near the center. That one, with the original materials we filed, we included a planted berm. That planted berm has remained this whole time with no edits. And then on the left, parking lot 44, that one did not have a planted berm when we originally filed. What we heard was the request for a planted berm, so we have since added that. One of the other things that Dan did allude to, it's not in the materials we already sent you, but we are committing to adding a solid fence on top of all 3 of these berms. So I guess when I said 42C did not change, it has changed. We're adding a solid fence to it. So lot 44, this is what we originally filed. There was no planted berm. The materials that you received from us last week have added a planted berm with 45 new trees on it. And what's not reflected here, but will be added, is a solid fence on top of this berm.
Now, Brittany, if I may, that revised plan there also shows that you took away a little bit of the parking as well, correct?
Correct, yep. There's a bit of reduced parking, and the parking is pulled back from the property line to accommodate the berm. Moving to the opposite side is 55B. Again, when we first filed, we did have trees here, but we did not have a berm. I'm going to show you 2 revisions on this one. This is what we filed last week. There was what we're calling a hockey stick shaped berm on half of the lot, and then plants on the other half. And the change that will be incorporated in the final set of plans, there will be a berm that will go around the 2 abutting property owners, and then the property all the way on the right is the property that the applicant owns. So there will be a planted berm against other abutting property owners. We have reviewed this with specifically the property owner that owns the triangle that you can see. We have reviewed this with them, and they're here today, and I believe this is acceptable. There will also be a board fence on this berm as well, very solid fence. That's really the changes. That's what we heard last time folks were looking for. So focused on screening, buffering, we've increased all of those. So with that, the outstanding items, we believe are, address the minor outstanding items with the peer review. We can get the revised set of plans into the town as soon as possible. We hope that you're beginning to consider conditions of approval for this project. And once we get through this process, we still have to go through MIPA review, which is a 4 plus or minus month process. With that, unless you guys have anything to add, I believe we'll pass it over to the board.
So I know, Brittany and those at the table, that there were comments that did come from our outside review for the peer review, and a number of them were already addressed in your response, but there were some that were still open. So if a member of the peer review team is there and would like to talk about those, I think now would be an appropriate time to see if you feel that they've been resolved appropriately, or there's still things that you need to be addressed.
So we have Greg Lucas.
Maria Pruauti.
Oh, Maria, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, Maria, I was going to.
Maria Pruauti from Environmental Partners, and Greg Lucas is also here. I helped with the stormwater review, and Greg can speak to any traffic comments. But just briefly, we did have one open stormwater comment and then 2 recommended conditions of approval. So I'll start with our stormwater comment. I know that there's multiple layers to this project, and we understand that the parking lots will not be used on a daily basis, but one of the stormwater standards is to meet certain requirements for land uses with higher potential pollutant loads. So we just recommend that the applicant provide proof that they're meeting the 44% TSS removal requirement for their infiltration best management practices on site. I don't know if you want to speak to that, or if I should go through the recommended conditions of approval.
Do you want to give Brittany?
Well, why don't we let them address that one question right now, if you don't mind. So, Brittany, can you talk to us about that?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Peter Tam on behalf of the applicant. I think, as Brittany indicated, I think the stormwater comment that your peer reviewer raised, as well as the other minor technical comments, I think can be readily addressed to the satisfaction of the planning director. I'm not sure we need to go through each of these technical items this evening.
We request a brief conversation with the third-party reviewer.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful, I think, since we do appreciate the timeliness of the responses, but we just haven't had an opportunity to talk about them internally. And I think it would be helpful, I think, for environmental partners and VHB to have that discussion and to reach resolution.
That's fine. Okay. I'm sorry, if we go back to any of the traffic questions you folks had for the board tonight, or for the applicant rather.
Before we discuss the traffic comments, I believe that Maria had a couple of suggested conditions, so we wanted to talk about those first.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we just have 2 recommended conditions of approval, which the applicant generally agreed to, and those are to meet stormwater standards 8 and 9. So stormwater standard 8 is to provide a copy of the final stormwater pollution prevention plan to the board. And then standard 9 is for the applicant to provide a operations and maintenance plan inspection reports to the board upon request.
Okay, thank you very much.
Pretty
Okay,
simple.
all right, thank you.
Yep.
So now, if you'd like to address the other matters, sir, I'd appreciate that.
Certainly, thank you. For the record, my name is Greg Lucas from Environmental Partners. I was a traffic reviewer on this project. There were a few outstanding items that aren't of great significance, but just things that we want to make sure are clarified and want to make sure that the board is aware of. One was related to, we had made a comment about the increase in size of a couple of the lots from a single access and promoted, the potential to use alternate access. And the response provided wasn't consistent with the exhibits that were provided in the initial submittal. And so I think there's just an issue of clarification in the response, and I'm confident that a follow-up response will clarify that, specifically regarding lot 50A, which shows primary egress and ingress from P11 and also has access to P10S. So in that case, there is two options for access that will be managed by the stadium parking staff. The under pedestrian access comments, it was stated in the TIA that there was a dedicated pedestrian path along the paved internal roadway, and the plans show a shared roadway with a hatched area painted on the roadway that's intended for pedestrian use. And so the pedestrians will have a fair amount of area where they'll be sharing a driveway with entering and exiting traffic. And so we wanted clarity on, if it is intended to be a dedicated pedestrian path and if a dedicated pedestrian path can be provided, similar to what's provided adjacent to the P11 and P10S roadways. And then, no, that was the only outstanding comment related to the pedestrian access. So that's of more significance, just to make sure that the board's aware that the TAA suggested a dedicated pedestrian path. It's in fact not a dedicated pedestrian path.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. Bobrowski, can you address that for us?
Sure. For the record, Matthew Pekarsky with the Kraft Group. So I'll take the lot 50 access. That was simply just a typo on the figure. So consistent with the way that parking lot, with the way P10 South has operated for the last, since 2007 anyways, primary access to lot 50 is through P10 South. The point of that comment and the explanation was to show that it, as redundancy, to their point, is it could be fed through P11 if need be. That's the purpose of that connection between the two parking lots. The second comment with regards to pedestrian connections down towards lot 44 and lot 45, it actually is the same exact configuration that we have within the P10 parking lots now. So it's the expanded wider section, cross section. Typically, I believe it was a 12-foot minimum we held. It's a painted hatched out gored area, if you will. It's the same setup that's currently on the sides of P10 South and P10 North right now. So again, it's a practice that we've had in place since the inception of those parking lots. And the way we operate it on game day is it's basically partitioned off with 42-inch grabber cones and or rope, attached to them. And that combined with signage allows us to, efficiently and effectively direct the pedestrians to and from the lots. So
On that last item, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we'd be, if it's not evident on the plan, we'd be comfortable with a condition to that effect, that it be operated with cone and rope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, members of the board, if anyone would like to comment on what the new information that Brittany presented relative to the berming, the fencing, and the configuration on the lots. I'm open to hearing anything that you'd like to say at the moment, and then we can continue on.
I just say thank you for trying to move this
matter forward. And although not everything has been addressed, I'm sure, to the degree that some would or will like, we're moving in the right direction, I believe.
I concur.
Yeah, you've done a great job with that. Solid fencing and all those plantings.
Could you tell me what you have, what at present, what you're thinking for a solid fence?
I guess that's open to discussion. You know, some people might prefer a vinyl fence because we did that in the employee parking lot because that was the preferred method. Some people might prefer a 6-foot wood fence. I would say that's
okay.
It's a solid fence. Yep. Won't have the gaps, so it will be a noise barrier. It'll be down tight to the ground because that's where a lot of the noise is able to pass through, if I'm to believe noise engineers. So it can be either or material, but it will be a solid fence.
Personally, I kind of lean away from the vinyl fence just because of the fragility of them and the colder conditions and maintenance involved.
I would concur. I do have an example that maybe I'll share with the board as to, you know, I'm not going to talk through exact systems right now. But it gives you, sorry about that, it gives you a little bit of a sense as to kind of what the thinking would be as far as this solid.
Very much in keeping with highway.
With the thought of a highway type barrier.
I'm sure you're scaring the butters at this point. Do we want to share?
I think
share this?
I think that would be.
Sounds scary.
That would be appropriate.
Sorry, I don't have 5 additional
You can take one of mine too.
Sure.
That definitely creates.
Maybe we should choke him.
It's the species of the plantings.
Those right there are white pine, but we're talking about the green giant arborvitaes. Again, they grow up to 60 feet tall and 15 feet wide.
How tall at planting time?
We'll probably say 7 to 8 feet because they grow up to 3 feet a year.
That on top of a 6-foot berm.
Correct.
And these would be on the slope of the berm, I would imagine.
Correct.
And is it your intent to plant both sides or just the neighbor's side?
Just the neighbor's side.
That's the only thing I would see being relevant. Similar to the suggestions that were made by one of the abutters.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So not to belabor
Just
this,
that,
but
thank
do you
you
have a quick summary, just so I can write it down? Each parking lot and what the treatment is? Just, I didn't know if you had one graphic. There was
We'll get you the graphic, but technically they all have a berm, they all have a solid fence, and they all have plantings.
And all the berms are 6 feet?
Correct.
So just a quick question. I know that Brittany, when you did your presentation, you showed the berm on one of the lots, and Ron made a comment about the fact that by creating that, making that change, that there was a loss of some of the parking spaces. Do you have any idea how many of those spaces it would be reduced by?
Yes, I do.
52. I believe it was 52 at the last meeting.
Yeah, I believe between the two lots, there's about 52 spaces lost. Some in 44 and some in 55B.
Okay. Anything else from the board at this moment?
I don't think so, Ken.
No, I think I'm good. Gary?
No,
I have a
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wait a minute. Paige has a question.
I just have a question about some of the operations questions about for example, the events over there, holiday lights, if we start thinking of conditions and whatnot, there has been some proposals about limiting things on the other side. We have talked on this side of town, department staff or town staff, and just, we're trying to figure out if there's any revenue generation that comes from those events to the town of Foxborough. There doesn't appear to be, although obviously there's some spin-off. It was a COVID, we believe it might be COVID-related, some of that stuff that was over on those parking lots.
All of it, because again, this year there's
Zero?
none
Okay.
planned.
So that was something that, sort of discussed, that while it doesn't necessarily provide any revenue to the town, it seems to be COVID-related, and also, although we do acknowledge that obviously at that time, drawing folks to Foxborough for, maybe picking up takeout and whatnot, there would be some spin-off, but, so that was one of the other factors, is starting, if, depending on where we end up in parking lots at the end, there's also other considerations, such as, the trash, the lighting, the trucks, the dirt moving after monster truck, things like that. So just some of those sensitivities. Have you given any thought to future operations on that? And
We have, and as I think they're aware, we have moved the dirt pile, and they had to go through it, I guess, one last time, as it were, but the dirt pile has been moved over to a more central location on the northern side of our property.
And what about the porta potties? Are they moved as well?
They're not completely moved as of yet, but as they are in progress.
Thank you.
so that's something operationally you think we can maintain moving
Yes,
forward?
and I think we can condition that as well.
We did, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, to respond to the comment on the viewing events such as a Magic of Lights. We would also be prepared to accept a condition restricting lots 42C, 55B, and lot 44 from being used for such viewing events.
Okay.
And just as we're along on that operational theme, I would just want to say, Paige, you had referenced cleanup work, and I certainly would not want to get in the business of bringing that into any kind of conditions without first having a dialogue with the Board of Health in Foxborough.
Mhm.
So I think that's a bigger issue just than operationally on site.
Mhm.
As far as the cleanup timing,
Correct.
Right. I think that was explained. If they wait till following morning, you might have seagulls.
Well, that's why I
Or
say
vermin
that.
of any
I
type,
mean,
but.
So I
Right.
was satisfied with
Yeah,
their
I
argument
agree
on
with
that.
what Jeff says, that should not go in as a condition at this point in time.
So I think I will open this up to the audience. I mean, once again, we have on record, both in writing and verbally from you, comments and questions relative to previous meetings. So I'd ask you, if you have anything you want to discuss, please bring new information to the table.
Mr.
And state your
Chairman, I
name
do
and address
have
for the
one more
record.
question before we turn it over.
Please do.
Do we have a photovoltaic plan yet or no? You do?
Yep.
Okay.
It's in the original submission.
Okay.
Along with the plans that we submitted last week,
Duh.
and they'll be updated in the ones we submit
Okay.
next
Thank you.
week or whenever that is.
Hadn't gone far enough.
Hi, Dawn Freiberger, 20 Concord Drive, Walpole. I'm just glad to see that there is a fence that is being put up. Obviously, we would wish this 42C lot will go away totally. And I think we've more than made that point on numerous occasions. We really are happy also to hear about the giant arborvitae trees. We would really love to request a higher height of the berm and fence to help block out light as well. Like a 10-foot berm. I think we submitted some photos of some examples of a 10-foot berm and then a fence on top of that. The other thing I would like to bring up is we greatly appreciate the fact that that dirt pile was moved last week. We greatly did not appreciate that it was moved well after midnight on a weeknight. So there were trucks and banging while people were trying to sleep, and then conversely, the folks over on Comstock, a few nights later, work started over there with the banging of dirt and trucks at 4 a.m. And this is the type of thing that we deal with all the time after stadium events. Why this work had to go on at these hours is beyond me. And this is exactly the type of activities that happen very commonly, particularly after Patriots games, but the monster trucks is by far the worst. Cleanup is a continued issue, and I know you started to touch on that a little bit, but that does not make Kraft a good neighbor when they decide to do these things at hours when people are trying to sleep for no good reason.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bruce Norwell, 19 Concord Drive in Walpole. I'm going to just echo Don's thoughts. Obviously, not having 42C there would be the first option, and it's becoming clear tonight that probably is not a viable option at this point. So I at least, we appreciate the consideration on some of our suggestions. Can I just ask for some clarification? The buffer and the fence that we're talking about, that, and I'm going to refer to 42C because that's a primary concern to our neighborhood. That's going to run the entire length. I think we measured it probably 600 or so feet of that, the line between the parking lot and the Concord Drive neighborhood. It will run that whole length. Do I understand that correctly?
Can I answer that?
Yes, Brittany, would you like to answer that, please?
Yes, correct. The board fence will be on the entire length of all of the berms.
And you mentioned increasing the buffer, and by that, I don't know if you, obviously we're talking about the berm and the wall. Is there consideration for moving that back? Because it was, I think, as the way it's staked out currently, it's about 20 feet from the property line. And we had suggested in our letter that maybe it could be bumped back to 50 feet. You lose very few parking spaces, but which really, I can't imagine would have any impact on stadium operations, while also significantly benefiting us just by adding that extra 30 feet or so. Is there consideration for that, by adding that just added space, just to give us a little extra room?
What is our distance now?
I would say to clarify, the location that's approximately 20 feet off the property line is our limit of grading at the pinch point. And the parking lot is skewed a bit, so that's the tightest and it gets larger. The parking lot itself is more than 50 feet away from the property line. The 20 feet is the limit of grading. And the other thing of note is that while we refer to a 6-foot berm for this 42C parking lot, it's 6 feet on the applicant's side, but on the other side, it's greater than 10 feet, and in some places 15, because the slope drops down significantly.
So on the abutter's side, the slope will be significantly larger than
Correct.
what is on the other, okay?
Correct.
Well, that was my next point, again, echoing Dawn's suggestion, to try to increase that berm by even a couple of feet should make a lot of difference. So from 6 feet to 8 feet to 10 feet, and then putting a 6-foot wall on top of that, it would go a long way towards helping to block out parking lot activities. I think we talked about lighting fixtures. I'm not sure I heard what the answer. We had proposed the lighting fixtures not being higher than the combination berm barrier wall. Again, just to block out lighting, and that they all aim towards the parking lot as opposed to some sort of configuration where we're going to get a lot of light bleeding into our neighborhood. Can you describe what the thought is on that?
Would you like me to answer that?
Please,
Yep.
please.
So the lighting, and I'm specifically looking at 42C, but I'm confident that this applies to all the lots. The lighting is all designed so that there is no trespass across property lines. On 42C, there are house side shield shown on each one of the lights. And the photometric plans indicate that the lighting circle I would guess 10 feet maybe extends beyond the parking lot, which, as I mentioned, the closest that gets is 40 feet to the property line.
Okay.
And that's shown on the photometric plans that we submitted.
I know we talked about the arborvitae's, and Dawn referenced the photographs. They, I think, give a fairly good representation of what we would like to see. I know we talked about the curfew and the trash pickup and that sort of thing, and I know that you'll look into that further, at least I hope. We do appreciate the removal of the dirt and the porta potties and all those sorts of things. I think it'll make a big difference. And the active parking, how about police details? Any consideration for funding additional police details in the Concord Drive neighborhood, just again, to cut down on any trespassing that we've complained about?
So it would be my opinion that I would think that that would be a matter that would be addressed between the town of Walpole and the applicant. You know, I'm not sure that that would be something I would want to consider as a condition of approval for this site plan.
I understand maybe not a condition, but I'm throwing it out there as a consideration, you know, because it is, call it an attractive nuisance, where the only reason this is happening is because of stadium events.
Well, I think this board has had a little bit of a, and I don't mean to be at all, you know, coming back at you or getting my back up, but I think we've had some differing feedback about the specific arrangement and how that has been interpreted and put into operation in the town of Walpole. So, I mean, I think that's a little bit far afield for this particular form, if you understand what I mean.
I understand. It's not really a permitting issue. I know it's more of a consideration. It's a, you know, a good neighbor type of thing, I guess. And my understanding is that the Kraft group does pay for the police details in Walpole, but those police details are mostly concentrated down in the, call it the South Walpole Green or the Village area where the traffic comes through. It's not really, there used to be, I think, as we explained 10 years ago, details in our neighborhood, but there aren't anymore. So we would like to see that as
I understand.
well.
I guess my only point would be that would, and I think we had some feedback to the effect in one of the letters that came in that would be addressed through the police chief and the board of selectmen.
All right.
And I would just suggest that.
That's fine. I'm
Let's
just
go in
taking
that
my
direction.
opportunity to express our concerns here, and I'm
I
hoping
understand.
that we have some open ears that will
If I
consider
remember
it.
correctly, in the conversations that we've had in the previous meetings, the Kraft group does fund police details in surrounding communities, but they do not dictate how the monies are allocated and where the details are placed. That is up to the individual chiefs. If I'm incorrect, please.
That is correct.
Okay. And I guess that's all I have. The only thing again, I would maybe ask for is that some consideration be given to pulling back that property line a little bit. We discussed that it's 20 feet off, and that's the front end of the berm. But if we could pull that back, just lose one row of parking. I think when I looked at the plan, it's like 60 parking spaces. But that would make a huge difference. It'd have zero impact on stadium operations, would have immense impact on our neighborhood. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Jim O'Neill, 3 Foxhunt Trail, Walpole, and a member of the Select Board. To address the questions that you've been just asking about the police details. So as I committed to this group in both of the meetings that I've been here, we did address that. We had the police chief in at our last board meeting, which was last week, and we talked specifically about the need to increase the number of police officers down, particularly in the Cobble Knoll and Concord Drive area. Right now, my understanding is we have 7 that are paid for by the Kraft group at this point. We have put in a request for 2 more. You may not have seen that yet, but the police chief in Walpole has gone through the police chief in Foxborough and requested 2 additional detail officers to be, and they will be positioned in the Concord Drive, Cobble Knoll area. So I believe that is taken care of.
In the works.
And I believe the Kraft group said any reasonable request you'd be willing to do that, so I'm kind of assuming that's reasonable, so we'll see how that plays out. But
Thank you.
the request is in, so thank you for that.
And I hope you just understand my point about trying to keep that as a little separate.
I'm totally
matter.
good with it, and as long as we can work it out with the Kraft group, we're good with that, and I think it is appropriate. The other thing I would share with you is we have also initiated the discussion around additional signage for no parking, no trespassing, those kinds of things. And the chief is working actively with the residents of that neighborhood to figure out, what the right way to do that is. We don't want to just plaster the street with signs. As you know, that's a beautiful neighborhood, and so there's we want to make sure we do it the right way. So that's a piece of work that's also in flight. So I think we are addressing those issues that you have raised to us, and I think we'll get to an effective resolution, in Walpole. You are right when you say the town of Walpole is responsible for operationalizing how the details are positioned. And Bruce was right when he said they have been largely centered down toward Schufelt and toward the South Walpole Common area. And that makes, really good sense for the most part. With the expansion of these lots and the attendant nuisance things that come with that, having a couple more detail officers, I think, will resolve that. So again, I feel like we're in the right direction there and appreciate the partnership on that.
I think Foxborough's fought that battle for about 40 years too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, totally. So very good. So we'll let that play out. I did have one question and then a comment. So my question has to do with the arborvitaes themselves and the ongoing maintenance of them. So you plant them, and they are fast growers. I'm familiar with them. I have them in my yard, so I'm familiar with them. I understand they are also deer resistant. Is that your understanding? Because that'd be important as well.
And drought resistant as well.
Yeah, so I think those are important things. Now, the drought resistant piece of it, and I'll address the board, this is, I think especially in the early going here, you're gonna have to water those things, okay? Because they're not gonna just go on their own. And especially with the buffer of the trees kind of gone there, it's gonna be warmer there now and sunnier there. And so I would ask that, we put some thought into the ongoing maintenance of those arborvitaes. So feeding them, watering them, especially in the early going, so we do get that 3 foot per year growth. The faster those things grow, the better off everyone's gonna be. So that's one. Number two is some of them will die because that's what happens when you plant trees. And so I would want to know that there's a maintenance program in place that is gonna replace any of these arborvitaes that don't make it for whatever reason, and make sure that that's part of your overall thought process.
I appreciate that, and actually, just in response, I would say that we've already thought, as a potential condition, certainly there's going to be at some point, even though this looks like a pretty hardy and solid fencing representation, long term, there's likely going to be some maintenance issues there as well.
Totally, yeah, and so the entire thing, the berm itself will need to be maintained. One of the things that I worry about with the berm is any kind of erosion that might happen on it, or just as the time goes by and it compresses. We need to just be thinking about ongoing maintenance of the berms. I would make the point that has been made tonight, but I think it's worth making again, is a 6 foot berm is a step in the right direction. A 10-foot berm would be a whole lot better. And so to the extent that that could be accommodated, I really think that would go a long way toward, resolving some of the residual concerns here, since the lots are apparently going to be built. So I would really ask your consideration on that.
I'll share my 2 cents on the berm, and I'll let Brittany handle it, but as far as I understand, for every foot you go up, you have to go out.
I agree.
A certain amount. So if you can give us the math on that, what 6 versus 10 would be as far as the bottom footprint?
Yeah, these are at 2 to 1, so if you're going up 1 foot, you need 4 feet, 2 for each side. I don't want to... At our pinch points, it's going to be tough to increase the size of the berm. At not our pinch points, we potentially could increase the size of the berm, but we would be removing additional trees and extending the limit of work. There is a give and take of maintaining the natural wooded vegetation versus a taller berm.
Okay. Well, that is something that obviously we'll leave to you guys to figure out, but it does make sense to me that a higher berm, is a better outcome for the neighborhood. With the fence, with the trees, I think it's a better outcome.
And could I just make one other statement? Just so no one would get the wrong impression, I do think there are permanent, ongoing, long-term, maintenance issues that have to be revisited from time to time. But I don't want to give anyone the impression that, at least in my opinion, I envision a landscaped berm. This isn't a golf course. And, the berm that's out there now, I think it's not beautiful, but I think it's pretty effective. And I think the vegetation has grown up nicely. Of course, it is further away from, the residential areas, but I don't want to give the wrong impression. I think what we're working towards a buffer.
Yeah, and I don't think there are any illusions along those lines, but we do want to make sure that whatever we do have built in there is maintained properly. And again, having those plants grow more rapidly is in everyone's best interest. So just wanted to make that point. And I would just thank you for, and to the Kraft Group for listening to the concerns of the neighbors around getting those berms extended across all of the lots with the fence, with the arborvitaes. I think that's certainly a better place to be than we were. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Could we condition those trees that they have to last for a minimum of a year or be replaced?
Well, that's kind of what we do with a standard subdivision. I would say, I would say the trees a
Probably
year,
in
couple
perpetuity,
years.
really. I mean, sometimes when we're doing it for like a little warehouse building, like the Summer Street, we did that. That's a little crematorium over there on this one. Crematorium, it's just a building. Sounds worse than it is, but, on this one, and this is an active crowd operation, I would think, even if in 5 years the tree goes down or the fence goes down,
Well, the fence maybe, but the trees are just an act of nature too. I think that.
Well, I think the buffer needs to be maintained, is my point. So I think if you end up with a loss of trees or whatever, for whatever reason, I do think the burden should be on the Kraft Group to maintain it.
We can have some conversation to where that
Like a
goes.
subdivision, make sure the tree takes.
Yep.
First year.
Yeah.
After that, they're very hardy, they're gonna take off. yes.
Now, I know in some of the smaller trees and they use gator bags, which keep the trees hydrated and fertilized even during dry season. I don't know if it'd be feasible to do them with a plant like that.
Again,
size. I
our
don't know
standard
the cost
condition
of
is
the bags.
usually, a couple years, so it'd be, they'd want it, whatever means they had to do to keep it alive and thriving, because like Gary says, once they take, they're usually good, so
Right.
chances are they'll use whatever means they have to keep it alive, because they're not gonna want to replace them.
Yeah, no.
Mr. Chairman,
And the
we're-
one other thing I would let the people in the audience understand is that, the beautiful pictures that were sent of the automobile lot, you have to keep in mind that those trees have been there for 10 or 15 years. So when these get planted, they won't touch each other the way those are. They grow not just up 3 feet, they also grow side to side until they create that green fence. So I don't want people to have any misinterpretation that when they're planted, that's what you're going to get, what you saw at Herb Chambers. It will get there, but it won't be there the day it's planted.
Traditionally, how far apart do you plant those trees for this application?
8 to 9 feet.
8 to 9 feet apart?
And those trees are approximately what in girth at the widest point?
Pardon me?
How wide are these trees at the widest point?
An 8-foot arborvitae.
3 to 4. So you've got a 4-foot gap in between, which would fill rather quickly. Okay.
We're comfortable, Mr. Chairman, with a condition regarding the, similar to what you would see, I think, in other contexts, including with the Conservation Commission, I think to Mr. Whitehouse's point, that the trees take for a couple successive growing seasons. We do note that cannot be in perpetuity, but certainly it's our responsibility to ensure that they take. With the fence complete, it'll be difficult to maintain anything beyond the fence without gates.
Right.
But that was obviously of interest to the neighborhood that there not be gates.
Right.
This is stating the obvious, I am sure, but I just wanted to say it out loud. The arborvitae trees would be on the neighborhood side of the wall.
That's accurate.
Okay, just.
Yes, that's
Wanted
correct.
to say that out loud. Okay. You guys mentioned that in certain areas, there's not enough room to, in width, to make the 10-foot berm because of the additional land needed on each side. Would you guys consider in the areas where it is that tight of pulling at least those areas back a little bit so that you can do a 10-foot berm? My house is the closest. It's the house with the pool, as everybody likes to refer on the plans. So if you don't have enough width in order to go up in height, I think that just proves how close this is to our property. So even if you can't do it along the entire length of 42C, maybe if you move back just a little bit in those particular areas so you can make a 10-foot berm all the way along would be a reasonable compromise.
Thank you. Is it possible where if it's going to be problematic to do a 10-foot berm, would it be possible to do a 10-foot wall at that point?
To what extent, though?
Well, let me ask
Can I just point out, it's not that we can't achieve the 10-foot berm, it's we can't achieve it without further encroaching closer to their property
I
line.
understand that, right? And you're losing parking, and I understand it. So is it possible to do a 10-foot wall on top of a 6-foot berm? Net, that difference is the same, as far as the neighbors are concerned.
Now, let me ask a question of Brittany along these same lines. In the area that she's referring to, what would be the height of the berm from her property to the top of the berm at 6 foot from the parking lot side? Because I know
Just give me
Yeah,
one moment.
yeah.
I mean, and that's a great question, because that's really
Right, because if
where the rubber meets the road.
if the grade continues to slope down and you're 15 feet from your property to the top of the berm at 6,
I would say the top of the berm is approximately 12 feet above the property line, and then there's going to be the board fence on top of that.
I think in certain ways, there has to be an element of, this is going to sound ridiculous, but almost trust here that we can work out these types of issues, not just for the betterment of the applicant's business concerns, but also for our most affected abutters here as well. And if you understand the point that's being made here, you might not actually have a sense of I remember you had told us when we were on the walk, looking out from the back of your home, or even from the windows, you might not have a sense of what that elevation really would be. And I'm not trying to suggest that you don't know, but that's a big difference.
I agree there's a slight elevation, I'm just not sure as much as is being indicated here.
Right. Well,
That's what we have to build to.
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Peterson's point, I do recall we worked with this board on the development of the soccer practice facilities with neighbors in that location where, in fact, that level of trust was established through a site walk, I believe on the berm, was my recollection, in order to establish some plantings in the field. And I think we'd be certainly willing to do that this go-round as well.
in other words,
I
when
think
you
that would be
first had
helpful.
formed up.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And if
I think
members
that
of
would
the-
be helpful, Mr. Tam.
Good evening, I'm Tara Spellman, 21 Freedom Trail in Norfolk. I'm one of the abutters at 44. I sincerely appreciate the fact that you guys have revisited the plans, changed the plans, and put that berming and the fencing all along the perimeter. That greatly impacts my concerns and goes a long way. So I appreciate what you've done there and appreciate that you're willing to do that. I just have a couple of questions. I saw the lighting plan for 44. Is this more lighting than in the regular stadium lots? It seems to be more dense.
I think it's the same foot candle requirement. There's a town minimum that we're required to hit. I think we're just above that threshold.
It could be because they could potentially be shorter light poles, and so you may need more light poles if they're shorter, but this is a standard design that's applied across the entire property.
Okay, it just seems more dense than the other lots that are over there, and that's my only concern. Those lights are going to be the last ones turned off because they're going to be the last lots cleaned. And I understand that there's shields on the lights. The sky will still be lit up. It will still be, there'll be activity in those lots until those lots are cleaned. And I am well aware of what operationally, how cleaning goes on. I'm thrilled that you're cleaning up sooner than later because of the rodent issues and the seagulls and the crows and everything else. So it's a delicate balance, but I'm also aware of who actually does the cleaning and how late it goes on. So I want to make sure that those concerns are addressed and those details are looked at a little bit closer, being that these are delayed lots. They're the last people to leave. They're the furthest lots from the stadium. As they said last time, operationally, those will be the last lots cleaned since they start on the stadium side and come across. So those lights will be on and still glowing in the sky. I think everyone in the neighborhood can tell you there's a glow from Gillette at all times from our neighborhood. So it's nothing. When game day and event days, it's much brighter because the lights are on. So that's just one of the concerns. We touched upon some concerns last time about the actual construction of these lots. I actually read some of the stormwater reports, and some of the test pits behind me hit bedrock at 3 feet. So that says to me there's, and I know there's a lot of ledge in that area. There was blasting that had to be done when Patriots Place was built. So what is the plan? What is the mitigation if they're going to be blasting bedrock behind our houses to construct these lots? What are the protections going to be put in for the residents for any damage to the house? We're all in the same, it's all the same property. It's all the same, the bedrock is the bedrock. So if you start blasting at it, it's going to have an effect. So I would ask the board to take those things into consideration and put some conditions into the permit for notification, for mitigation, for restitution.
Yeah, I believe so. It should be very strictly regulated as far as any blasting, permitting, inspections, post-inspection.
Pre-blast surveys, notifications, there is a state protocol.
And we're comfortable with a condition to that effect.
And the other thing that we've brought up in the past too is our water and our wells. Again, if there's going to be blasting going on, how is that going to affect the aquifer? How is that going to affect the quality of the water? The construction, I know that there's regulations about what can be filled in for the construction, but removal of earth, removal of boulders, removal of land, removal of trees, filling it with something else. There's concerns about our water quality and whether our wells are going to continue to work. Is there a condition that can be put in that our water is tested quarterly, annually, to see if the changes based on the construction at the stadium and of the lots have an effect on us?
How do you make sure your water is safe now?
We have it periodically tested.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Mr.
If the testing starts to prove that it's, something happens and the well is not producing properly.
The
then
point is
the
well
liability
taken.
issue.
I think Mr. Tam would like to respond to this.
Well, I appreciate the concern, and it's not an unusual concern to have. I think in this case, the board has done their job. We have a very thorough, voluminous stormwater management report with an O&M manual that supplements it. All applicable regulations and Massachusetts standards have been complied with. That has been peer-reviewed by your independent peer reviewer. And those facts provide the board assurance that these lots are going to be operated and maintained in accordance with law, and that they are going to be designed to not have a negative impact on abutting properties.
Right, but I
That's the
think she
very
has a-
purpose of that review.
Right, but I think she has a very valid concern that what if something happens?
And this is, it's a lot of changes. In addition to the construction, it's the operation of those lots. So, you know, tailgaters are, we all know, they're dumping everything on the ground. Where's that going? It's percolating down, it's being cleaned, it's stormwater, it is, but it is affecting what, the source of our water.
Well, we may have a little bit of a different, I mean, we started this talking about the potential impacts of the blasting.
Right.
What, such as it was, or may be, in that particular area, which is still undefined, I believe, right? Correct. But now you're just talking about the operation of a lot.
But the operation of the lot is going to have an effect, it's going to have an effect on things. So,
Has it affected your water to date?
not to the best of
Have
my
the-
knowledge,
have
but it's not, there's no lots behind my house right now. It's woods, and there's no parking behind my house right now.
If I may, I believe there's an existing stormwater infiltration basin, underneath proposed lot 44 in close proximity to her home. So today, there is a substantially sized stormwater infiltration basin that is recharging stormwater runoff in accordance with Mass DEP regulations in close proximity. So that's an existing condition that sounds as though it hasn't caused any issues yet. We're not changing the use here.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, that, I think, I don't know a lot about blasting, but I know it's pretty thorough and comprehensive, so I would hope that the blasting surveys would cover.
Just to clarify, we're not proposing any blasting in this
Right, I
area.
know, but I'm
We've
just going-
intentionally raised grades over here.
Okay, so they're talking about that, but again, if blasting is required, I know there's a rigorous requirements in that industry for what has to be done. It's not optional. I don't know if wells are covered. I don't know if anybody can answer that, but I think beyond that, you know, this is, again, it has been reviewed. It meets the stormwater requirements. It's an allowed use. So getting into starting to water quality in neighboring towns is really, you know, it's a bit of a stretch perhaps. So, I mean, I think and again, the blasting is covered by the rigorous blasting requirements. So I'd be surprised if your well stopped working, you know, right after blasting, that probably won't even occur. But if it did, you know, that would all be covered under that. But, you know, if it happened a month or two later, I don't know how that works.
I'm happy to hear that they're not planning on blasting.
Yeah.
And you know what you have there, so.
I think on the issue of wells blasting and testing, what we've seen in some instances is, I think, and I'm looking to Dan and Matt for a little bit of a reaction here, but the intent is to avoid blasting. If there is to be blasting, we're very comfortable with a condition that says we have to meet all applicable state requirements, which includes pre-blast surveys. And I think we would go further than that to say that we would consider an appropriate condition that says we would evaluate wells, both pre and post, and do testing within reasonable proximity. What we can't do is be held responsible for private wells that may or may not function due to no fault of our own. So I think the blasting concern is readily understandable, and I think we're prepared to address that. We're obviously going to try to avoid it. The plans are designed to avoid it, but should it be necessary, we will be managing that in accordance with law.
I would think you would avoid it.
And we would go further to provide assurance to the neighbors that if it were to be necessary, that we would have consideration of any proximate wells.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one final thing. I presume that once the digging starts, that all of it will be done during normal business hours, that we're not going to be doing late-night digging, extremely early morning digging. It will be more or less on the, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. sort of thing. Is that correct?
Probably the typical construction work is 7 to 3:30.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me, the town of Foxborough has, it's like, and it's kind of a little, it's like 7 or 7:30, I don't remember the.
7 a.m.
So,
All right.
we do have hours of operation and none
Right.
on Sunday typically
Correct.
for construction. Right.
All right, because you've heard the concerns about heavy equipment, just moving dirt and so forth, so I just wanted to make sure that we're not going to be dealing with that for the next 3 months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Christina Walsh, 240 Summer Street in Walpole. I would like to mimic that the Kraft Group has been very responsive and has taken into account all the considerations the last 2 weeks, so I greatly appreciate that, and they've added everything to our land for 55B, and I believe I'm the only one here representing that area, so you may already do this, but if there are considerations in extending the distance from our property line, if you were to extend it, I just ask that, our lot be taken into consideration also. You may already do that, I'm not sure, so I just wanted to ask that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was the area, was that the one,
The triangle.
The triangle.
is that,
Stonewall.
what did you end up doing for that one?
Stonewall.
That's also 10 feet and,
6 foot.
6
berm.
feet, they're all 6 feet.
Six and
sorry, yeah,
6.
I've got 6 foot in the top.
I think we've had our commentary here, Mr. Chairman.
I think we have as well. Any further, anything else you have to add, Paige?
No. I mean, we don't necessarily, I don't know that there's a appropriate, from a voting perspective tonight.
I think we want to continue it because they said they were going to
Okay, good.
have another meeting internally to discuss some things.
Okay, good, because I was going to say, without Tracy, and I know if Tom were to vote on the special permit, he would have to Mullins in because he missed the first meeting, so we have a little bit of, so right now, we're at sort of a reduced number.
And I think we certainly want to spend a little time, on proposed
This might be,
conditions.
yeah, I was going to say, this might be a good one to have our conditions in hand.
Fine tune to get the conditions in place.
Yeah,
Can I just
for you
ask-
guys to look at.
I'm sorry. Can I just ask, when, assuming once you vote on this, when will the construction actually begin? Roughly? This summer, I expect?
Brittany had mentioned earlier in the evening tonight that if and when it gets approved by our board, it goes in front of the MEP, which is gonna take approximately 4 months to 6 months to get through, so.
So we're not looking,
It won't
and then
be
we're into the
tomorrow.
winter time, and then, so next year, is that?
Depending on the MEPA process, if there is some work that could be done before winter, we would probably like to do that, but more than likely, the way the process plays out, that it's springtime of '25. But if there's an opportunity in 2022 to do that work, I would like to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Just to kind of follow up on that, would it be fair to say that, in other words, can you do that concurrently with events or games? You can.
Mr. Chairman, at the pleasure of the board, I would suggest that it is possible for the board to conclude the public hearing component of this process this evening. understanding that you'll want to be able to assess detailed conditions and deliberate. I would suggest that final plans reflecting all the most recent adjustments, as well as confirming those minor technical items from the peer reviewer, can be addressed directly, so that the plans that you're considering are in fact final plans.
I think the
I'm not
concern with
concerned
that,
about that,
Peter, is
Mr. Tam, but I take seriously the comments that Paige made in terms of having a more complete board, and in the event that a member is absent, that our associate member will have an opportunity to Mullins in and make sure that you get a full vote. Okay. So that would be the only reason. I'm not concerned about it. And I do think it would be important for us to have the conditions in place so that we all know where we are, both applicant and board, before we conclude and then take a vote. So respectfully, I think I would ask for a continuance as long as the board goes along with that.
And what are you folks thinking, in terms of duration?
If we could get on a call with EP, that in short order, I think if Paige can help us set that up, I think we could be ready in probably 2 weeks, right?
We can still close the public hearing, but not vote.
if you close the hearing, then technically you should not receive any more information from the Kraft group. So, I mean,
Correct.
you should not be, even Peter submitting things to assist, technically, we should not take any more new information in. So, the kind of hamstrings, I mean, we don't.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we'll have to continue.
Okay. What do we have for available times, Diana, for the next meeting?
We got May 12th, or June 6th.
Well, Mr. Krantz kind of alluded to the fact they would hopefully be ready in 2 weeks. Would you like to do 2?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Time?
7:15.
It's the only item on our agenda.
Okay.
Wow.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing, special permit site plan for Kraft Group to 7:15 PM on May 12th.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Jeff, aye.
Ron, aye.
Gary, aye.
Kevin, aye.
And we should have a full board present at that meeting, I do believe. And I'll give Tracy an opportunity, Mullins, and Tom, just in case.
And I saw you taking notes. I don't think it'll take us that long to work through conditions. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
White House motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
Kevin, aye.
Ron, aye.
Gary, aye.
Good night, Kev.
Good night. Thank you.